our regularly scheduled program over on YouTube. So for those of you guys who are here watching, we're going to keep moving. We're talking about breaking through your plateau. So again, there are words on the screen. If you're on Facebook and you don't see them, come on over to YouTube. So one of the reasons why discussing this plateau issue is so important, especially in the month of January, is because plateaus are inevitable. So that is one of the things that I talked about inside of that. I sent an email. I also posted like in this post. When it comes to hitting those plateaus in your journey, they're inevitable. They are going to come. They are meant to come. So if you are having issues for whatever reason and you think that it's just you, it is not. It is also everyone else that has ever been in a fat loss journey ever. So again, one of the reasons why it's a good idea for you to be over on YouTube is because of the fact that I am going to screen share and do some shenanigans over here. So when it comes to hitting your plateaus in your workouts, it's not a matter of if, but when that will happen. So knowing ahead of time that these plateaus will happen is going to be your first line of defense in stopping them and or avoiding them. So it's not that they don't always, like they always exist, but it's up to you to actually take the time to stop them from happening. It's up to you to make sure that you know that they're coming so that you can circumvent them. So that's one of the reasons why we are having this discussion, because if you have a strategy in place, then you can avoid the downsides of a plateau, which I'm laughing because a plateau is technically just a flat surface. So the downside is actually going all the way down. So that is why we're talking about strategy today. And the biggest reason why we're talking about strategy is because I know a lot of you ladies are inside of our workout vault community. And when it comes to the workouts that we're talking about in there, and especially my Diet Rebel Method girls, we do a few times a year our blueprint building process. So this is kind of the lead in to that, making sure that you guys remember why we're doing those blueprints, why they have the level of detail that they have, and why they're so important. I know a lot of you guys also have had them like done like with me, where I do a blueprint for you and you know the level of detail that is in them. This is the reason why that level of detail is in them, because of the fact that you have to plan for plateaus rather than just going about your journey as if they don't exist. Because what happens is that when someone is not aware of the fact that the plateau is on the horizon, that plateaus are out there and they exist, they throw everything in the kitchen sink at their goal, and then they have no moves to make when it's time to make a move, when they hit that inevitable plateau. So a big part of this blueprint building process that we're doing, ladies, when we're having our sessions next week, is because of the fact that we want to make sure that we take into consideration that these things are happening and that we plan accordingly. So that is one of the biggest things, is recognizing that they come first and foremost. If you're not willing to acknowledge the fact that the plateau exists, if you're not willing to acknowledge the fact that the plateau is going to come, then you will not plan for it, which means it's going to have pretty much a downfall for you at some point, because they do always exist. So now, just to put a disclaimer on this, as I tend to like to do, is that this information is obviously for someone who has experienced the plateau. Like if you're in a plateau right now, obviously it's a no-brainer for you. But the direction that I'm coming from today is making sure that you understand and you're going to get the most value from this if you're somebody who is either probably over the age of 40, 50, 60 years old. You have either, or maybe you've gone on diets before, multiple diets, you've like lost and gained the same 15, 20 pounds, like minimum, like more than once, or you've had multiple children. So if you fit any of those categories, like if you're like menopausal, postmenopausal, premenopausal, or maybe you're still in your 30s, but you've had multiple kids, like maybe you kind of sort of fit over here, or if you have had, like this extensive diet history. So the reason why I like to say that before I start my talks is because I am speaking to grown women. And because of that, I'm going to speak to you like a grown woman. I'm not going to speak to you like a child. I'm not going to speak to you like a 20 something, which means that there will be times that I may address things that you did in your youth when you did not know any better. And we're just girlfriends talking it out. But know that I am, even as a girlfriend, that type of friend that, like, if you're like, do these jeans make my butt look fat or whatever, I'm going to say yes if they do. Like, that is, I'm here to tell you the truth. That is a big part of who I am. And in 2023 and beyond, that is my commitment to you, is to show up as who I am. And that means there is enough people, channels, gurus, whatever, like, telling you what you want to hear. That is not what I'm here for. So that's the reason why I try to put this disclaimer at the beginning, because I want to give any and everyone who does not fit into that category time to exit the building, because we are having grown folks discussion today. You're going to get a heck of a lot of value from these chats if you fit those categories. If you are over 40, have had kids, have had an extensive diet history, things like that, and you're willing to, like, have the heart to heart, you're going to, like, take out your pen and paper, because, like, if you've been into any of my trainings before, that's pretty much the way that we roll. Like, you're not going to want to miss some of these things. If that does not describe you, hopefully I have said enough now to deter you, to turn you off, to make you like, who the heck is this chick and what does she think she's doing? Like, why is this old lady trying to tell me about that? Like, whatever. If that's you, maybe you've had enough time to leave, so that us grown folks can have a discussion. So just so that we know and that we're on the same page, like, if you're not having any problems with your diets right now, everything is working amazingly well for you, then this, like, there's better use of your hour that you can be using right now. So I always like to give the disclaimer, because I don't want to waste your time or mine if you're here and you've chosen to come and hang out with me for this probably about 45 minutes to an hour. So the goal of our time together here is to discuss not only plateaus, but why they exist, if you're actually, like, how to identify whether or not you're actually having one, because sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about what plateaus are and whether or not this is actually happening to you. But that's what we want to talk about, is what a plateau is, identify the causes of it, so that you can understand how to break through it and adjust your diet and exercise XYZ accordingly. So we want to be able to make that transition. And this is a lot of information. So what may or may not happen is that there might be, I might have to break it up into a little series or something like that, just so that this isn't a 3 to 4 hour workshop, because there is, some nuances that go into talking about plateaus, because there's so many different things that cause it. But when you get to the nuts and bolts of what it is and what causes it, then you can start to break down, like, your individual way of breaking through it. So that's the reason why I said, like, for you ladies that are inside of the workout vault, this is preparation for our blueprint sessions. They are very detailed for this reason. And that's why I want to make sure that you are, like, taking into account all the things that we're talking about today. So because we have that short time together, I'm going to, like I said, either break it up into multiple sessions if needed, or I'm thinking I might end up doing something with you, especially you ladies that are inside of the workout vault and the diet rebel method, having a kind of an accountability group. I'm throwing the idea around in my head right now of doing like a 90-day group, only because so many of you responded to the email that I did a couple weeks ago, like, about January spots opening, and you snatched those spots up, and the rest of you are like, hey, wait, what? I need help. I don't want to be the person that quits on January 15th. So I'm throwing the ideas around. You ladies that are inside of the vault and the diet rebel method, let me know if that's something that you think would be useful to you. I know that was specifically around cutting, so maybe some kind of like cut accountability group, or accountability thing. I don't know if it's going to be a group, because I don't know if I want to manage a group, but maybe like some calls and stuff that we do. But so what we want to do is, like I said, regardless of where we go with this, just promise me that you're going to take action on the things that we discuss, because it really is important. It really is a big deal for you to know that the plateau is coming and how to have this plan of attack for it. So like I said, if you're doing the blueprint, you'll have that. If not, then take full notes on this session, because if I end up doing another one, they may get taken down and put in a course or something somewhere, but it's all going to be good information. So with all that being said, let's jump in. Again, if you guys are joining on Facebook and you can hear me but not see me, or you don't see words on the screen, or whatever the case may be, come on over to YouTube. That's where I'm living my life right now. So first and foremost, let's talk about what a plateau is, so that we can understand what it is and why they happen to you. So in order to discuss this a little bit better, I'm gonna throw a couple of photos on the screen, just so that we can get a little better idea of it. So first, there's this version of a plateau. I think things are over here. I think this is flipped. It's over here on me. But when you're looking at this version of a mountain, there's like a mountain and the top is very flat. I know this is elementary for a lot of you guys, but I really want to like take this from the top so that we can truly understand what's going on here, because there are multiple versions of plateaus. So I want you to first understand like which version you have or have hit. So a plateau is basically, it's the definition of it is that it's basically a relatively flat piece of ground, but that piece of ground, even though it is flat, it is still higher than the other areas. So that's the reason why I wanted to make sure that we put this on the screen, so that we can understand the difference between like what sometimes we think a plateau is and what it actually is. Sometimes we're at the bottom of that mountain saying we've hit a plateau. Like the plateau means that like at least you were like making progress at some point in time, and now you're not. And now it's just kind of like topped off. Now you're just making horizontal movement instead of vertical movement. So that's the reason why I want to show you these different variations of what a plateau is and what it looks like. So you have this high ground with a large flat area. Okay. So like it's still higher than everything around it. So when you have hit a plateau, there was some point in time where you were making progress and now you haven't anymore. There was some point in time where there was like activity, progress, whatever, and now that activity progress has actually flatlined. So it's important to understand that the flat line is at a place of progress, not still flat on the floor. So if you were trucking along, hit a plateau, and if you look at this particular image, like maybe you just like you're moving horizontally this entire time and then it starts going downwards. That's no longer a plateau. That's actually progress that's going in the reverse direction. So that's important to know. The difference is that if it's staying exactly the same, that's a plateau. If it's higher than what it was before, that is a plateau. Like if you can still look down, look back and see the progress that you've made, that is a plateau. So that's how you understand if you're experiencing one. Now, the reason I want to show these images is because I want to show you variations of these images. So there's plateaus that are like this, where it's just like you've gotten to the top, and maybe that's just the top. Maybe that's actually the peak. It's just an extended peak of it. Like maybe you're just at the top of that particular mountain and it just is what it is. So you're just looking down and like maybe it seemed like it was a lot more when you first started. Like you're like, oh, man, when I get up there, it's gonna be amazing. And you get up there and you're like, what? This is it? Like I don't get it. Not that big of a deal. So there's that variation of the plateau where it is the top. You've reached whatever that peak is, and there's no other peaks in sight, but it has leveled off. Then there are variations like this. So if you look at this particular mountain series, there are multiple mountains there. There's peaks, there's valleys, there's mesas, there's plateaus. I know this isn't a geology lesson, but you get what I'm saying. So like sometimes there is a plateau that is between a couple of peaks. Sometimes the plateau is the peak, but you're like, oh, but I like that mountain over there looks better. Like I want to go to that peak. So you want to start identifying if or when you hit a plateau, like being able to classify whether or not the plateau is something that is just like, I'm at the top, like this is as good as it's going to get, which is sometimes called a metabolic set point. where you're just like, you've reached, this is all your body wants and is capable of doing in this moment. Sometimes it is like a holding period until you get to the next thing. So it may seem like it's horizontal movement and then another vertical peak comes, and or like you're there, it's preparation for the next vertical peak. So sometimes it's just a holding place. Like it's just like, this is just kind of where I am until I get to the next thing. So like maybe there's some stuff that you have to do. Maybe that next peak is so intense and it's so much higher than where you are now that like there's some stuff that you got to do in order to get there. So that's the reason why you want to start looking at it like that. So if you look at like this specific example, like there are these like plateaus that are, they're lower than the peaks of the mountain, but they're still like, when you zoom in, they're like with that first inventory, they're still higher than the other ground, than the flat level ground. Like it's not plains territory, it's still like part of the mountain. So there are peaks and valleys in that way. Now another variation of that, so if we like, so one, just we showed the 100% flat version. Now we see that there can be these peaks and valleys to where like maybe yes, you've hit a plateau and there is more to go, versus you've hit a plateau and you're at the top of the mountain, like chill, enjoy it. And then there are going to be variations like this. So when you look at variations like this, like there's not a whole, like there's flat land, but like not really. And maybe you guys can't really see, like, let me see if I can adjust myself a little bit more so that you can see that a little bit better. So in this example, like these are really, really steep climbs. Like, yes, there are like places where they're flatter. And even if you look at that like tallest one, it still has a like flat top to it. So it's partially about like what you're expecting this mountain to look like, of this mountain of the goal that you're going after. But there's also like understanding that having that plateau at the top like isn't so bad. Like you need something stable to stand on when you get to the top. So first, defining what the plateau is for you, what type of plateau it is, what level of plateau it is. Is this like the basic level plateau? Like I haven't even hardly like done anything, and now like I'm not seeing any more results. Is it like I've gotten all the way to the top? So like in the case of your like fat loss journey, maybe, there's sometimes, and I will get clients who have like, they're on like these, maybe they're not at like the top one, like on this, but they're at that like second top one, and they're just like, I don't understand what's going on. I've hit a plateau, and it's like, girl, you're like 15% body fat. Like, what else are you trying to do? So it's like sometimes it's that, and then sometimes it's someone that's like at the bottom of the mountain, and they're just like, I don't know, everything that I try, like nothing is working. I'm at a plateau, and it's like, okay, well, where were you? Well, I was at 275. Where are you now? I'm at 285. That's not a plateau. That's you're going downhill. So like even if you were on some type of high ground, like you actually like started going in the opposite direction. So there's plateaus, there's reversing, like there's regression in what you're doing, and then there's also like, just maybe a little peak or plateau or mesa, before heading into the next thing. So understanding that everyone's version of plateau is different. That's the reason why I said that this like could be a 3-week chat. Like we could have a whole conference about just this, about the plateau. So I'm really trying to wrap these into like generalize them as much as I can, because this is a public spectrum versus a like one-on-one call, so that you can identify yourself within these different variations of a plateau and identify which of the things that we're discussing apply to you, so that you can apply them. That is the whole point of all this, is that I want you to walk away and actually apply the things that you've learned. But it doesn't make much sense if I'm only addressing the person that's at that peak plateau, and you're somebody that's at that like base level plateau, or maybe seeing some regression. Or if I'm addressing the person that's at that like nice, steady, stable, flat line, that like you've done the work, you've put in the things, like you're actually okay. Like this plateau isn't all that bad. Maybe you just hyped it up more in your head, or thought it would be different than it was, or whatever. You climbed the wrong mountain or something. So addressing people at different ranges requires different things. It requires a completely different plan of attack, which is why for those of you guys who are inside of the workout, that is why we do the blueprint work. That is why we break down all the questions, because everyone's stuff is so individual, and you have to take the time to figure out what your individual things are, especially if you're DIYing this. Obviously, if I'm doing it for you, like, great, I'll tell you what they are. But if you're doing them on your own, you're gonna have to take the time to do it. Like, that's just, like I said at the beginning, we're having grown folks discussion here, so I'm gonna give it to you as straight as possible and hope that you forgive me later and still love me. So now, looking at all of these variations, we can look at that definition of the plateau, is that it's high ground, flat line, but it's still high. You can still look down and see other areas. You can still look back and see that there was some progress. So now, when we have this question of how do you know if you have hit a plateau, that's going to be the answer. Is that, like, you know that you've hit a plateau if you were making progress and then it stopped. If you're still moving, you're walking along that plateau, but nothing's happening. Like, so you're doing the things, but you notice that, like, it seems like I'm just going horizontal, not vertical. Like, I am still moving. I am still, like, walking along, or like I'm standing here, but I'm not standing here at the bottom of the mountain, like making up things saying that I can't get to the top. I'm standing here and looking down at, like, man, I thought I was, like, doing good, but I'm like, what happened here? So if you are making slow progress, but you're still moving vertically, that's not a plateau. That's just slow progress based on whatever, expectations that you had in your head. If you are not starting, if you are at the bottom and you're not moving up at all, that's not a plateau. That's a starting issue that you have. So it's definitely want to first attack the issue of where you are. If you have gotten to the top of your mountain and it's not what you expected and your plateau, now it's time to look around and say, like, do we need, is there a different mountain or something that we need to look at? So now that you know what a plateau is, and if you've actually hit one, then we can move into why they happen. So I had to lay that foundation first, because of the fact that there's going to be so many people that think they hit a plateau, and that a plateau just means, like, I'm not moving fast enough, or I tried something for a few minutes and it didn't work, or something like that. So if you have hit a plateau or have hit one in the past, and you're watching this, or you're planning for when you actually hit one, you now know how to classify when you hit one and which area it is, like what type of plateau it is. So what are some of the reasons why your plateau would happen? So again, this is real talk. I'm not, like, my wording is probably not going to be politically correct on a lot of these, because I just want to lay it all on the table so that you understand the why, so that you can kind of see if any of these belong to you. So the first one that I would say is your strategy sucks. And that's not saying, like, because it could just be non-existent. So it may not be that your plan or strategy, like, sucks. Like, it could just be that you don't have a plan or strategy, which in that case, that's why it sucks, stinks, whatever the proper version of this is. The point is that if you don't have a plan, or you have a bad plan, like, that is probably one of the reasons why you've hit a plateau, because of the fact that, your go-to diet plan or strategy, sometimes that's the case, is where we have, like, this go-to thing that we always do and it always works. And then because of that, we just keep doing it. If you've watched any of my other videos, one of the things that I talk about a lot is the fact that what you do in your 20s, 30s, sometimes even early 40s, like, if you didn't have to start dieting until your late 30s, like, what it takes to get results then is not the same as what it's going to take to get results in your 40s, 50s, 60s, like 10, 20, 30 years later. So, like, it's going to seem like it's different. In reality, it actually, like, took the same. But that's the point, is that as you get older, diet and exercise, like if you're just been doing that kind of haphazardly, doing whatever you felt like, and like stuff would just kind of happen because you accidentally took in less calories than you were burning, or you accidentally like, like worked out and burned off more calories than you were eating. Like just because you were stumbling on that and it quote unquote worked doesn't mean that like that's a rock solid strategy. It just means like you accidentally did something and it worked. So sometimes success can be a really crappy teacher in the fact that when we do something and it seemingly works, then we begin to have this stance on this is what I need to do. But the thing is that because of the fact that as you diet and exercise, bring children into the world, get older, like all of these things, like all of that is affecting your muscle mass. Like we've talked about this on previous chats before. And the thing is if you're not paying attention to that, then it's going to keep getting harder and harder. So in order to like lose fat after like 25 years old, when your metabolism and your muscle mass starts declining, things are going to need to look different. You're going to need enough muscle mass and a high enough metabolism to support the goals, the look, whatever that you want. So that's a big part of why a lot of people hit that plateau, is because like they just didn't have a plan in the first place, or their plan is to just do whatever they did before that kind of sort of work. And the thing is, like I said, you can get by with it for a while, but the stuff is still always happening in the background. Like you can not floss your teeth for a long time, but eventually, like if you get a cavity, you can't be like, oh no, I was able to not get this cavity filled before and life was fine. Yeah, but you didn't have the cavity before, but you also still had the floss before and you didn't do it. So it's just like, just because you weren't doing things and it worked doesn't mean you keep doing it. So if your plan or strategy sucks, like obviously that's an easy fix, is to get a better plan, or to actually have a plan in the first place, like be willing to adapt with that plan. So that's one of the first things that I would say happens with a lot of people. So I would stop there. If you feel like you've hit a plateau and you can't actually like say what your plan is or what your strategy is, like there's not really one there. If it's just I'm doing this workout plan, or I found this, I'm trying out keto, or I'm testing this thing. Like if you're kind of throwing darts in the dark and you can't pinpoint an actual strategy, then that would be your first thing to kind of check into, is like, okay, like what is my legit strategy as how it plays into like where I am now. So like what's my whole like goals? Am I trying to lose fat? Am I trying to build muscle? Am I trying to maintain what I've lost? Like what phase am I in? And am I doing those things for it? So like if my phase is in building muscle, am I eating enough calories? Am I eating the proper amount of protein? Am I lifting in a periodized manner? Like am I doing these things? Like do my efforts match the thing that I'm saying that I'm trying to do? Or am I just doing a bunch of stuff? Am I like doing this, especially in the fitness industry, because so many things are touted as if they're doing both things, like build muscle, lose fat, like do all these things. And because of the fact that we keep eating it up, we don't always realize that sometimes we're like taking fat loss behaviors and applying them to a muscle building lifestyle, or vice versa. So it's very important to know whether or not you have a strategy, and then tweak that if you're hitting a plateau, which that is some of the tips that we're going to go into either in this session, or probably, like I said, I'm going to break it up like into like what those strategy tweaks are for both diet and for exercise, because they're different. There's tweaks that you can make all over the place, but it's important to know like if or when you need those tweaks. So the first one would be the plan being, whatever, sucky or non-existent, not having a strategy at all. The second thing that I would say that plays into why people hit plateaus is age, diet history, or ignorance. And what I mean by that is that your age, diet history, or ignorance has caught up to you. So like I was saying in the first point, is that, there could just be a possibility that you've used up all of your get out of jail free cards. So like there's always been the, what is it, $200. I haven't played Monopoly in forever. There's always been this $200 fee to pass go, right? Like it has always existed. It's just you started out the game with a handful of get out of jail free cards. So for so many of us, that's what happened there. So that's what I mean by like ignorance. It's not like, again, like I said, I know my wording is not like politically correct on some of these things because like it may land differently than what I'm trying to say. But the point is if you did not know, that is ignorance. If you did not know about these things while you were aging, while you were dieting, you were not implementing these strategies, then guess what? Like the stuff was still there. So just because you have the get out of jail free card and like every time you came around that you're just like, oh yeah, I'll just do this, I'll just do this, oh here, take this, and then you get around again and you're like, no, I don't have that, and the person is like, okay, well now you need to pay $200, and you're like, what? I don't got $200, that's too much money, why do I have to pay $200? Never had to pay $200 to pass go before. I've been pass and go for the last 200 times, 200 rounds, and I never had to do it before. Like none of that matters. It still was 200. Everybody else that came around had to pay the $200. Just because you did not have to pay the $200 doesn't mean that that was not the charge for it. That doesn't mean that that was not the cost of it. If you have never played Monopoly, I understand that this makes zero sense to you. But for those of you guys who have played Monopoly before, that is what happens there, is that you go around the board and you get to a certain place on the board, and either you had enough moves that you just passed it and like you didn't land on go, so it didn't affect you, or you land on it and you have a get out of jail free card. So there's that. So in case you've never heard of that before, that's what that means. So it's the same equivalent of what I was saying about like if you got a cavity and your dentist is like, you need to start flossing, you need to come, get this cavity filled, you need to come see me every 6 months to like make sure that you get your teeth clean and everything. You need to now start using the special toothpaste. You need to, like, if there's all these things, all these stipulations now on how you have to care for your teeth, like to get upset at the dentist and be like, I never had to do that before is not gonna help. Like great, glad you got away with it for as long as you could, but now you have a cavity, so it needs to be filled, and if you don't want future cavities, you need to execute on these things. So that is what I mean by that is why like so many people will hit that plateau because of that. Because if age, diet history, or ignorance has caught up to you, then you did not realize that like age, for instance, you started losing muscle at 25. If you are now 55 and all of this stuff about like needing to build muscle and heal your metabolism and all that stuff, like if all of that is new to you, then you are able to have both ignorance and age on your side. But now you have 30 years of that compounding that you now have to deal with. It was always there. You always needed the muscle. You just had more of it when you were younger. So as you continue to pull from those stores, now you don't have the things that you need. So that's why it's important to understand that just because something wasn't that way before doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be that way now. So when it comes to your plateau, like that's something that you want to consider. Like you want to look at your strategy. Do I even have a strategy in place? If not, let me stop there and create one so that I have something to measure these things up against. Because sometimes we're saying plateau, but if you haven't been like measuring everything, you don't know. You don't have a strategy to compare it to say like, oh, my strategy isn't working anymore. It's just like something isn't working anymore, so let me change or overhaul everything. And that's never going to work. So if you have had a plan, like if you're currently having a plan and maybe you have some frustration around that plan, like, so for instance, like I said, if you're somebody who you come upon this information or you found eat more to weigh less, this year, 5 years, 10 years ago, whatever, and you hear about these, like this metabolism reset and the building muscle and all those things, and you're like trying it, but it seems like, okay, this is going so much slower. So like I said, that's where we want to analyze, like, is it slow progress or no progress? And also we want to analyze, like, where is the plateau? Is the plateau with increasing your calories or is the plateau with decreasing your calories? Were you at that plateau before you came into this journey? If so, then recognizing the steps that you're going to have to take, sorry about the sirens, recognizing the steps that you have to take is going to be about the acceptance of the fact that, like, dang, I had age on my side for a long time. I had, or I hadn't done that many diets before. So therefore, it wasn't that big of a deal. So maybe the first couple of times that you did the diet, it worked. So you had diet history on your side. For somebody who's starting this journey, like maybe your first diet's at 40 versus somebody whose their first diet was 12. A person whose first diet was 12, like, they're gonna hit plateaus a lot earlier in life. And if they don't do the work of rebuilding their muscle metabolism and all those things, then they're going to like remain on those plateaus or even start a regression over time. So again, that's where age, diet history, or ignorance will come into play. Now, another reason why people tend to see issues, plateaus, when it comes to their weight loss journey is sometimes it's about a body recomp. Now, when we talk about body recomps, it's body recomposition, which means basically like the things that are happening inside of your body are changing, but you don't necessarily always see them on the outside. So maybe your scale weight is remaining the same while your body fat and muscle mass are shifting. Now, the thing that I want to point out is a lot of times when I'm referring to body recomp, I'm talking about it in a good way. Like, oh yeah, the scale weight is staying the same, but you're losing, or especially in the industry, like everyone likes to focus on the good part, right? That like you're just gaining muscle while you're losing fat. That's why your scale is staying the same. Yes. And that could very well be happening. And in the best case scenario, that is what's happening. But let's not forget that body recomp also goes in the other direction. So if you are someone that has hit a plateau, but you have not been focusing on muscle mass, you are only focusing on the scale moving, and you're like, no matter what I do, the scale won't move. And you're not even like, you're oblivious. So again, this is where that ignorance comes in from the other one. Like, you're oblivious to the fact that you need to be focusing on your muscle, or maybe you kind of know, but you're like, I just really need the scale to go down. Like, if you're so focused on that and your weight is staying the same, that could actually be a very nasty recipe of what's happening there, because that is also body recomp. Remember, when it comes to maintenance, maintaining of your weight, there's no such thing as maintenance. So as much as, like, yes, we looked at those examples of actual like mountaintops when we were talking about plateaus in the beginning, it's important to understand that that is not how the human metabolism works. The human metabolism is always anabolic or catabolic. It's always building up or tearing out. Those are the only options. So if you are so overly focused on keeping your weight, your scale weight down, that you're never taking the actions that is required to build or maintain your muscle mass, then your body recomp is still happening, but it's happening in the way that we in the fitness industry like to pretend that it doesn't happen. It's in a way that we as fit pros, as fitness enthusiasts, like, we just like to think about like, oh, well, maybe my fat is turning into muscle. No, there is a possibility that things are happening in reverse. If you're focused on keeping your weight the same and you're not going to do these things to build the muscle, to maintain the muscle in the way that you're eating and the way that you're working out, then you are losing muscle. And if that weight is staying the same, it's fooling you because of the fact that like your muscle is going down, but your fat levels are going up. So even though things seem to be staying the same on the outside, they're not. That body recomp is happening in the wrong direction if building fat is not your goal. So that is one of the things to also understand with a plateau, is that like sometimes the plateau can be a good thing if you're like executing all of the right behaviors and it seems like nothing is working. That's where a lot of times we talk about like DEXA scans and stuff like that. That's where that will come into play, because of the fact that you're able to analyze if that is the case. You're able to analyze whether or not you're building muscle, losing fat, or whatever. So that way it's a little more like reassuring if the scale isn't changing at all. You're able to take a look and see like, okay, what is actually happening there? So body recomp can go in either direction. So that is also something to consider when you're on a plateau. Is that what's happening? Is the body recomp happening? So if you're doing all the right things and your body recomping, if you're lifting the way that you should in a periodized way, you're eating the way you should in a periodized way, you're building muscle while you're losing fat, then it's okay. It's a good thing to be on that plateau. Like, that's a very healthy plateau. And like we looked at those in the beginning, that's one of the cases where you'll be going to like, you're going to finish out what you're doing there, and then you're going to take that next steep climb to whatever your next thing is, and then it's going to be very visible what actually just happened there versus the plateaus where it's just you're just flatlined forever and ever and ever. So that's one of the things that you definitely want to take into consideration if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and those things are happening. If your DEXA scan is showing that recomp is happening in the upward direction, if your recomp is showing the opposite, if you do a, if you do a DEXA scan or whatever, just actually like acknowledging it for yourself and this body recomposition is happening, it's important to understand that, okay, this is why I'm at a plateau, and like, am I willing to break that plateau weight wise, either up or down, in order to do these other things. So like, which is more important to me, keeping my scale weight where it is, or stop the bleeding basically of all of this muscle that I'm leaking out because I'm forcing my body weight to stay the same and not focusing on rebuilding of the body mass the lean body mass that I needed in the first place. So body recomp could be another reason why you have that plateau. And the solution, like I say, goes two ways, depending upon which one it is. So with that being said, another reason why you could be having this plateau, again, when we look at these, let me see if I can put one of these back in here again. So when you look at these visuals of the mountains, you could just be climbing the wrong mountain. So that's very important. So let's imagine that these mountains, like if you're coming at this like from the side and you're climbing up to a place that has a plateau, or let's imagine it like these mountains are separated. If you're climbing a mountain that's just smaller or not what you've actually intended it to be, then you're going to end up just being on that flat level surface. So we talked about the difference between the two of these. And one of the reasons why you want to make sure that you're looking at that from that perspective is that if you've hit a plateau, but it's because you were climbing the mountain that you thought you wanted to climb, and when you got to the top, you're like, this is not what I expected, or why isn't this happening? One of the examples of this would be like a person that is insisting on losing weight when maybe they need to actually build more muscle, or a person that is insisting on, they're investing all their time in weight loss when they really should be focusing on fat loss. So in instances like these, that is where you've hit a plateau because you've climbed the wrong mountain. You climbed the mountain of weight loss, you lost the weight, and you're like, this doesn't look like I thought it would. Or you are hitting that, like you're losing the weight, but you're like, I don't understand why I stopped losing weight. I don't understand why these things are happening anymore, because of the fact that you weren't focusing on the muscle. And now your body is just like, look, I would rather get rid of muscle than fat at this point. So you're wondering like why things don't look right. So that's what I mean by climbing the wrong mountain. That could be the reason why you hit the plateau, because you could get to the top of that mountain and you haven't stopped to look around and realize like, oh shoot, that's the mountain that I thought I was climbing. And when you realize that, then you have a couple of choices. Do you just be like, well, oh well, I've climbed this mountain, so I stay here? Or do you climb that down, that one, and go up the right one? That is going to be the hardest decision that most of us ever make in our lives, especially when it comes to hitting goals. Sometimes you have climbed and you put in hard work and effort to get to the top of that mountain, only to find out that it has a flat base instead of a peak, only to realize that they all looked the same from the bottom. They all looked like they had a peak, but the one that you climbed, like, yes, you got to the top of it faster, but it's not where you wanted to be. It's not actually everything that you thought it was, and it's not even the right mountain. Only you can make that choice when that happens to you, of whether or not you want to change it, whether or not you want to actually leave and go back up the mountain that you wanted to climb in the first place, or whether you're just going to be like, well, spent 20 years doing that, may as well just hang out up here and hope that a peak shows up like sooner or later. Like, if it's not going to show, it's not going to show. So you can either decide to just be there and enjoy it and just be like, you know what, I'm not willing to spend another whatever 20 years of my life focused on this, or whatever, another year going down the mountain and 2 years going up the next one, because like at this point, neither one, like that one may not be worth it. Like you have the freedom to decide to take it whatever way you want to take it. But it's about accepting that that may have happened for you, and that could be the reason why you hit a plateau. The plateau may not be because it's like on the way to something else. You might actually be at the tip of that mountain, which was why I gave those examples in the beginning. So the next reason why that would happen is because there could just be a failure to adapt. So this I see a lot, and these are like, as you see, all of these things kind of stack onto each other. And this is why like the plateau is so much bigger than just like, oh, it's because you need to cut out dairy, or you need to cut out wheat, or you need to cut out gluten, or you need to do fasted cardio or intermittent fasting, or do HIIT, or do Tabata. Like none of those things matter when all of these other things aren't in place. Like these are the bigger picture items. These are the things that really matter when it comes to breaking your plateau this year. So that's why like I'm doing this session, because I want you guys to understand, like there's the stuff behind the stuff. Like there's the surface level stuff that, you know, we can keep feeding you guys in the diet industry. And I'm saying we, even though like I try not to classify myself as that, but like I said, like this year, I really just want to give it to you guys straight. I don't want to just keep like hyping up things that don't need to be hyped up. Like when it's like there are tried and true things that need to be done. And if you're willing to do them, you get the results. If not, like if you just keep attacking the surface level and not dealing with all of the stuff here, like the rewiring of your mind over the stuff that you've learned, then you still won't get the result, even if you're doing all of the other stuff. So when I talk about failure to adapt, it's taking into account the things that we've talked about, taking into account what we were saying about like recognizing that, you know, what got you here won't get you there. What you were able to do in your 20s and 30s is not what you're going to be able to do in your 40s and 50s and 60s. When you have a sucky strategy or no strategy at all, like, yep, maybe you got by with that, then that's not going to be the case now. Like you can only pass go so many times before you gotta pay up. So that failure to adapt is just that. It's recognizing that it's this like failure to recognize the bigger picture and adapt accordingly. When we were younger, it's easy to kind of like have this like hope that things would get better, and to kind of like have this like butterfly floaty way that we go through life thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna, if I just do this and everything will magically take care of itself. And you know, it's like if you're someone who's been married for like 40 years and you're talking to someone who's like engaged, and you're like, here, you need to do this, this, and this to make sure, because you know, marriage is hard work or something like that. And they're like, your marriage is hard work, not mine. Like it's recognizing that there's going to have to be this adaptation at some point where you're going to have to step back and look at the bigger picture. That maybe when you were, you know, a teenager with your first job, and your parents are like, if you save $50 a week, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 60. And you're like, I only make $100. I'm not saving 50, you know, or whatever the case may be. Like you could have those perspectives then, because things seem so far off. We are at an age now, most of you guys who are following this, and like I said in the beginning, like if you're not at that age, that's fine. Like go out, go make all the mistakes that we've already made, and then come back to this later. But when you don't step back and look at the bigger picture of what has really been happening and then adapt accordingly, you will inevitably continue to hit those plateaus. Because a big part of not recognizing or accepting that a plateau is out there is that like naivete of our youth, of like, I'm just going to do this and there's not going to be any problems. There will be problems. There will be plateaus. There will be failures. You will try something and it may not work. Like if you understand that, then you can approach things from a different perspective. So when you step back and look at the bigger picture of, okay, if I lose all this weight and I don't focus on muscle, that's the way it's going to be when I get there. If you understand the bigger picture of that, there's no such thing as maintenance. Your body is always either building up or tearing down. So if you constantly focus on tearing down, you are losing muscle mass, and therefore that is going to affect your metabolism. That is bigger picture. But if you're only looking at the small picture of like, but I stepped on the scale today and it said this, like that is, you're leading yourself into a plateau, because you're not paying attention to like, okay, is my focus on the scale in like a delusion of what's actually happening? Or vice versa, is like my focus on the what I'm eating, or not focusing on what I eat, or refusing to track my food or something like that, like, is that a delusion to these things that I'm saying that I want, to this like fat loss that I want? So it's important to understand that, like I said, there's so much nuance to it because it's different for each person. So if you understand the bigger picture, there's no such thing as maintenance. If you understand the bigger picture, that there's no one size fit all phase or workout or way of eating or whatever that like fixes everything, then you will stop searching for it, and you can get okay with like, this is the phase I'm in. I'm going to execute on this phase, get the benefits of it. Then I'm going to move to this phase. I'm going to get the benefits of it, and I'm going to move to this phase. You can start making like deposits into your account instead of just making withdrawals, because you recognize that like, okay, both are needed. If I just save, I'm never going to like spend my money ever. But if I just spend, I'm never going to have any money. So like, it's about recognizing that when it comes to your physique goals, looking at the bigger picture and recognizing that the more that we keep searching for this magical unicorn phase, diet plan, or whatever, that I'm going to do this one type of exercise, this one phase of, workouts, this, I'm going to join this one gym and do this one type of class, or I'm going to, buy this one piece of equipment or whatever. When we keep looking for like the one thing that's going to fix all the things, that is living in delusion. And then we don't actually adapt accordingly. If we don't recognize that like your body is going to adapt to every workout phase, to every calorie level, to the things that you're doing day to day, then you're not going to plan for something different. You're going to be like, you're going to say blanket statements like, well, 1600 calories just always worked before, or 1200 calories worked before, or every time I lower carbs, it works. They're blanket statements that aren't actually feeding into the bigger picture. Like, they work, but at what expense? When you look at the bigger picture, you just even those things out. It doesn't mean you take things away, you just even it out. So it's important to look at the fact that the body is adaptable to all of those things. So you have to plan for like, when it adapts to this, then I'll do this. When it adapts to this, then I'll do this. And you have this strategy along the way that is helping you to put those things together. So bigger picture, looking at that and then being able to wind it in is going to help you not only break through plateaus, but help you to prevent most of them from happening in the first place. When you understand that every moment that you're not actively focused on building muscle, you're actually losing it, then you're going to act differently. You're just going to move differently in whatever it is that you're doing. So it's just really important to make sure that you're ready to take that step back, look at the bigger picture, and adjust accordingly. And obviously, one of the biggest is if you're looking at the bigger picture of muscle equals metabolism, then you're going to adapt to that versus doing more and more things that actually damage your metabolism. So this is one of, I would say, like the bigger reasons why a lot of people end up like, so if you had to sum up a lot of the other things that we discussed and pretty much all of the other points that I've made here, most of them come down to this. And it's the refusing to like look at or recognize that all this stuff is happening over here and thinking that like, well, I'm a special snowflake, it doesn't need to happen for me like that, or maybe things will magically work out better, or maybe I won't have to focus on that, instead of making those things like a stair step for where you want to go, because your body is going to adapt. So you need to, like, your brain needs to adapt to that fact that like everything that you ever throw at this journey, your body's going to adapt to. So what's next? So that's also the reason why in our next session, like, I'm going to break down like what are the things that you can be doing, like the tactical ways of breaking that plateau. But if you don't get this part, then what's going to happen is you're going to watch that segment and you're going to try to do every single thing that I said all at once, instead of recognizing that it's the doing them one by one by one that is the strategy of adaptation. If you do everything all at once and your body adapts, you have nothing left. You have no wild card. So you want to always have that wild card. So like I said, for those of you guys who are inside of the workout vault, when we're doing our blueprint sessions next week, we're doing them Tuesday and Thursday. When we're doing those, this is what we're doing. This is the point of what it all leads to, is creating like the step after the step after the step after the step. So that way you have them and then you can just lean into step one. That is the most important thing, is the ability, the willingness to lean into step one and not think that you have to do them all or that you have to do them all perfectly, but you just know that they're there when you need them because you probably will one day. And so you want to take the first thing as far as you can possibly go, and then you hit the plateau, you add the next thing. You take that as far as you can possibly go, and then you add the next thing. The day of doing the overhauls, the whatever, the New Year's resolutions, the like, I'm going to do 30 days, no sugar, no carbs, no, like whatever, all those things, like that is unnecessary. When you recognize that, then you can take the first step. And then when that's not working anymore, adapt and take the next one. So failure to adapt really just means that recognizing the what got me here won't get me there. And once I'm finished using this thing, even though it's helping me to grow in this moment, there will be a time where it's not helping me grow anymore. And then I will take it to the next level. So that's something that when I'm working with my clients, we call blind spots, because a lot of times, like, there's something that you start executing and it is your needle mover. And it's your needle mover for so long that you stop seeing when it's no longer a needle mover, and that gets you tripped up. And so you're like, I don't understand. This always worked. This always worked. This always worked. Or all I had to do, I thought this is all I had to focus on. And it's like, yes, that's all you had to focus on. Then now that your body has adapted, you need to focus on the next thing. So being constantly willing to like adapt and grow and shake and move when things like tend to not be working anymore, instead of looking for the one size fit all, is going to be like, that's going to be your claim to fame when it comes to actually like breaking and preventing plateaus. So the last thing that I would say for this session, and like I said, in the next session, we're going to really like go into like how you can break it, like step by step, like actual like action task wise of like what you can do, diet and exercise. But the last thing that I would say that I see for people that have an issue with plateaus, constantly hitting plateaus, or inability to break plateaus, is because they are going it alone. So not getting help, not asking for help, not putting yourself in a community of people that like get it, not having someone around, because all of the other stuff, like if you're trying to accomplish something that you've never accomplished before, something you've never done before, something you've never been able to maintain before, there is going to be tons of doubt. There is going to be tons of like confusion. There is going to be frustration. There is going to be lots of, am I doing this right? Is it supposed to feel like this? Is it supposed to be this hard? Why does it seem like it's easier for everybody else? All of that is going to come up. And if it's just you and you, who can answer those questions for you, especially if you've never done it before? So that means that when that like, am I doing this right comes up, who's to reassure you that you're doing it right? Who's there to say like, oh yeah, like they're like climbing the mountain with you, or they're like a little bit further up on the mountain, that when you're at a plateau, they can be like, oh no, when you just keep going, it's gonna like, you're gonna hit a turn and then you're gonna be able to get up to the top of the mountain. If you don't have that community or camaraderie or accountability or coaching or mentorship or something, if you're not surrounding yourself with people that are on that same path as you, it's going to be easy to not only hit the plateau, but stay there and possibly go backwards. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say, is to make sure that you have that, especially here we are at the beginning of this year. Like, for those of you guys who are watching now, obviously you could be watching this replay in October or something like that and getting ready for the following year. But the point is that in January, we all have these big highs. And one of the things that I love to tell my coaching clients is like, when you're having a high, plan for the low. When you're having these moments of like, I can conquer the world, plan for the moments in which you're going to feel like the world is conquering me, because of the fact that they're going to come. We are not, again, remember, this is just girl talk. Like, it's going to happen. So if you're prepared for it by putting those people around you, that when you're like, all right, like when I start getting like this, like remind me that I said this or whatever, or you have like this coach that's going to remind you of like, well, these are all the reasons why you said you wanted it, or whatever the case may be. You have this community of people that can rally around you during your like hard times and remind you of your why, like that is where the magic's going to happen. And I'm saying this as someone who is an introvert. I understand. I'm an introvert. I'm a very independent person. I, am the oldest, the firstborn, like all the things. I understand being independent and not asking for help. And even being the person that like everybody else comes to for help. So you don't know how to ask them for help, and or because you're the person that everybody comes to for help, if you do ever say you need something, they're like, yeah, right. Like they laugh at it. They don't even believe you that you need the help, because they're like, you got this. Like even if you complain, they don't even take your complaint seriously. So I get that. Like I understand that it can be like that, and the majority of the women that I coach are like that. Like they are like, they're the independent woman. They're like the firstborns. They're the caretakers of their family. They're putting everybody else first except for themselves. Even if they ask people for help, they're like they don't get it, because of the fact that they never complain. If they do complain, people are just like, oh gosh, here you go. Like people make a bigger deal out of it than it actually is. Like I get that. You still need people around you that are like you. You still need somebody around you that gets that. You still need something to take you to that higher level, because the thing about it is that if you're like that, if you're that type of person, you're also the type of person who is capable of so freaking much. Like you are like the top like 10%. Like you're the person that's capable of so much, but you're spreading yourself way too thin, and that's why things aren't happening for you. So that's the reason why you, more than anyone, need to have that around you, because you deserve it, and because there's so few people like you. So you need to go find them so that you can remember that you're not crazy, you're not insane, you're not just this like I don't know why I'm like this, and maybe I just want too much, or whatever the case may be. Sorry, I think my laptop's about to die, so let me get plugged in here. So if you're that person, if you have always been that for your family, if you're the person that is like, I don't get it, why do I want all these things, but it seems like they constantly elude me, but yet you're also that person that is doing all the things on your own. You're too afraid to ask for help, or too proud to ask for help, or you want everything to be perfect. Then you have to also accept what comes along with that. And that's slower progress, sometimes no progress, because of the fact that you will continue to give yourself, your energy, to other people accomplishing their things. And you're toughing it out by yourself. And that would be awesome if you were truly giving yourself 100%. But the thing is you're giving yourself 100% of the 10% that you have left over. So that shows how amazing you are, because like, dang girl, you're accomplishing all that with using, 100% of 10%, with like 10% of your energy and the other 90% dispersed out into the atmosphere to everybody else who needs it. That's also why like you deserve the most. Like if you look at the people who accomplish the most on the planet, in the world, the people who are doing big things, the top whatever athletes, competitors, Oprah, like whoever it is, all of these people, all of these like singers, speakers, whatever they're doing, they all have coaches. They are not doing it alone. So yes, they are the best of the best, and they have a coach so that they can get better. They have like their like tight knit group of people who get them, because guess what? The whole rest of the world doesn't. So like it's one of those things that like, even though it seems very oxymoronic, it's almost always, I would say, especially with like the women that I've coached over the last couple of decades, like when I look at the ones who are having that like struggle, they're right there. They can break through. They can break through their plateau. They can break through to this goal. They can get to their next level. Those women, usually that's the one thing that's in their way, is that like they're trying to do it all themselves. So therefore they can't, because they're too close to it. They can't see it. So they're doing all the things. They're like, I'm executing everything perfectly. I'm on point. I don't understand why it's not happening for me. That's usually why. It's usually because they're going about it alone. And because like, I'm gonna keep it real, like it can be hard to find people that are doing the types of things that you're doing. So like whatever, even something as simple as this, something like, okay, I'm trying to like lose weight by eating more or whatever, you're here for. Like, you're going to have so many people in your life that are going to be like, why wouldn't you just eat less? Why wouldn't you just go on this run? Why are you going to do this metabolism reset thing? Why would you build muscle when that's just going to like make you like every single thing? Like, they're going to be like, that you're doing what you need to do. But there's going to be so much other stuff out there coming at you. And because you're not looking around and seeing other people like you, because you are unique, you're going to start like, there's going to be that doubt. There's going to be the like, I know I can figure this out. And there's the problem. Like, why do you need to figure everything out? Think about it. If you can be there for everybody else in your life, if you can be there for them, like, why don't you get that? Why don't you need that too? You do. But because you're that, it seems like, well, there's no, like, have you ever just felt like I need a me for me? Like, I've felt that before. So like, I don't know, like maybe that's you, but if it is like this is what that means. So like, it could be harder. I'm not saying that finding your tribe, finding your people is going to be like easy, but it is possible and it is necessary, because the best of the best have it. The best of the best get coaching. Like, a person who is like a great singer, why would they need a singing coach? An athlete who is a top level athlete, why does he need to be coached? Because that's how they get better. That's how they break through their potential. Because of the fact that everybody else is looking at you like, what do you need help for? You already do everything like so great. You already execute everything flawlessly. You already have all this discipline. Like, if you're that person, then you may have to go outside of your current circle in order to find the things that you need. So that is my, like I said, I know that we're just having girlfriend talk here. And that's why I'm talking to you guys, because I know that like attracts like, and I know that so many of you guys are like me. And the reason I know that is because of how quiet you are on a lot of the chats that we have, how many of you lurk inside of the groups. Like, there's tons of you, but everybody lurks. How many of you will purchase DIY versions of courses versus coaching version of courses? How many of you will not post in a group, but then maybe send an email if you decide to do something? Like, I know that, and I get you because I am you. But the thing is that doing it by yourself takes so much longer. So if you want to go fast, sure, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So find people that get you and will go on that journey and path through you. That is one of the reasons why, try as I might, I keep trying to do these videos inside of the Facebook group, the EM2WL, or the Crushing the Diet Mentality Community Facebook group, and they're not necessarily like working in there, because I want to help you guys to cultivate community and find the people that are like in this with you and in it together with you. And I am like here to be there for you. And that's the reason why I keep hopping on and like doing these lives in the middle of my crazy busy schedule, because like I want to be there for you guys and help you through this. But you got to be willing to get the help. You got to be willing to talk to each other. You got to be willing to talk to me, you know what I mean? Or reach out and find somebody. Go hire that personal trainer. Go whatever. Get the therapist. Go sign up for it. Like, that's the reason why like Weight Watchers and all those things tend to like work so well, is because people are like, the camaraderie of people like, oh yeah, there's other people that are trying to lose weight as well. Am I telling you to go sign up for WW? I am not. But understand why those things work for so many people, because of the fact that if the people around you aren't trying to do it and you're doing it, then you don't have that, and you're going to continually doubt yourself and second guess yourself and be frustrated every step of the way. So I don't want you to have that frustration. And like I said, I know that so many of you did reach out for coaching for this quarter, for January coaching, and spots filled up very fast. And because of that, that is why I decided to hop on here and at least do this series and spend some time with you guys that weren't able to take part in the coaching in that way. I will say, like I said, I am contemplating possibly doing something inside of the workout vault community, doing maybe some type of accountability thing or something like that. But again, it's all dependent upon like if you guys actually want that level of accountability, or if it's something that you you still want to go at it alone, because you have the right to do that. Like I said, like, yes, I am addressing you as grown-ups here, and I'm also giving you the grown-up choice to walk away and be like, I don't care what Kiki said, I'm still going to do it on my own. You have the right to do that. I've done it plenty of times before I really leaned into being coached, getting coachable, getting help, finding community, and people that actually like understood the journey that I was on. So I get it. That in and of itself is a path. But if breaking through your plateau in 2023 is important to you, or whatever, 2027, whenever you're watching this, if breaking through that is important to you, then going it alone needs to become less important to you. If you want to break through, find people that get it, go hire the coach, get the mentor, do the things, join the groups, participate in the groups, be seen. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to get the help that you need. You deserve to take up space and ask the questions as much as the annoying person in the room that keeps raising their hand is asking all the questions. So put aside your judgment of them and get what you need, girl. Whether that is, like I said, in those groups, or if it's at home asking your husband or kids to take out the trash or whatever while you like actually sit down and let them do the work. Whatever the thing is, you deserve it as well. So if you guys have any questions about this particular series, let me know. Like I said, in our next session, we will, now that we've kind of understood what the plateau is, identified the possible causes of it, in the next section, I will do more of a thorough breakdown. In case you can't tell, I do thorough. We will do a thorough breakdown of how to adjust your diet and exercise accordingly so that you can like stay motivated throughout the way and be able to plan for these plateaus and things like that. For those of you ladies who are inside of the workout vault, I did already post the Zoom links for our calls, for our blueprint call. So make sure that you go and get registered for those or get the reminders for those so that you don't forget. I will also send out the emails for those. And like I said, they will be very detailed calls because of the fact that if you're choosing to do the blueprint on your own, then take the time to put in the work. So I will be there to walk you through it, to guide you through, but just come to the calls prepared to roll up your sleeves, get to work, bring your coffee, bring your pen, your protein shake, whatever you drink, green tea, bring that to the call, and let's be prepared to get down to business. And for those of you guys who are not inside of the workout vault, I hope that you will at least enjoy this series that I'm doing for you guys for free, and just take advantage of it and actually take action on the things that you're learning here. That's all that I ask you, is that if you're able to come and spend an hour or more with me on these live chats, that you walk away from them and take action. So I gave you, I don't know, 5 or 6 things or something today of different reasons of why you may have hit a plateau. Look through them, maybe rewatch this and take note of if any of them kind of ring a bell for you, and then bring those to our next session for when we start talking about the actual like diet and exercise things that you can do in order to change them. So we'll be talking diet, exercise, lifestyle. When I say diet, I just mean your way of eating, not like an actual diet. But obviously, if you're in a cut phase, then it will kind of have the traditional term to it. But yeah, we'll talk about eats, exercise, and lifestyle in our next session of the ultimate guide to breaking through your plateau. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining. Again, if you are over on Facebook and this did not stream properly, I'm sorry, but I'm also not surprised because this is just where we are right now. And I do ask you to come on over to YouTube and make sure that if you like the information that you go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you're notified when I'm live, and it will send you some whatever the alert is that YouTube sends you to tell you that I'm live. If you just hit the subscribe button, it's not going to tell you. If you hit the notification bell, it will tell you when I'm live. So just the difference. It doesn't matter if you subscribe or not, but as long as you hit notifications, then you'll know whenever I'm live, and you can be able to like hop on and ask questions, or ask questions in advance when I post that the live will be in advance. That is helpful as well. So anything that you would like to see in the future, you can also leave that in the comments, and I will do my best to hop on. Maybe once in a while I'll post some short and sweet, but just know that when I come on live, you're getting the full shebang because I'm coming here to give you the information so that you can actually take action, because of the fact that, like I said, I know that like I can't one-on-one coach everybody, and not everybody can even afford to join in on a lot of the group coaching that we do. So I like to make sure that you do still have information to take action on if you are not in that position yet to take your accountability and coaching or knowledge or whatever to the next level with some of the paid options. So thank you, ladies, for joining, and I will see you in the group or in the comments here if you have anything that you want to add. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I appreciate you, and have an